Hey, how are you doing? I don't think political ideology forms ideal society. So I think political ideology is very excellent in terms of making people look in the same direction to unify people's thoughts and people's political creed. So because it is very easy for administrators to control people in the country in accordance with a judicial system or a legal system based on the political ideology. So, no matter how ideal world a leader envisions, it is almost impossible to govern a country unless forcing people to accept a certain political creed to unify people's thought in the same direction in the process of establishing political infrastructure in the country. For example, Japan is democratic state, and diversity of political ideology is widely accepted on an individual level and on a political party level in a Japanese society. So, but fundamentally, we can't deny democracy, which is Japan's political ideology, looked as a significant political foundation to survive in Japan. So everyone must make a compromise and accept the political ideology adopted by the country where they live, no matter what kind of political ideology they have, and no matter what kind of political creed they have. So, in other words, in order to function governing structure in the country, the only one political ideology that forms the political foundation of the country must be adopted in the country. So, this was proved by history. It is a must to unify people's consciousness together to control the state. So if more than two political ideologies coexist in the same state, same country, so many conflicts break out domestically for, power struggle by political force over achieving mutual ideal. So if so, administrators have no room to think about how they make the ideal society, how they make ideal world, because their objective for the time being is a victory of the war. So the word of ideal comes from extreme self-conceit and exclusive thoughts that tend to eliminate diversity of individual political creed. So what ideal is differs depending on the people. So after all, if a leader with extreme ideal establishes a country, establishes a state, more or less political structure largely influenced by the leader's ideal is established, and people in the country are forced to obey the legal system based on the political system. And conclusively, a country that has a leader who absolutely believes in the ideal that he hold up himself tend to follow the fate that a leader rules over people in tyranny that is almost far from the initial ideal. So it is obvious if you learn the background that Russia incorporated the socialism in its political structure, and China incorporated communism in its political structure historically. So a political ideology called socialism or communism was established for releasing, labor class, working class from suppression and unfair abusive treatment under the control of capitalism during the period of industrial revolution. So Marx and Engels announced the Communist Manifesto in 1894, and they earnestly started the socialism movement. So Soviets synthesized the political ideology and incorporated this political ideology into political structure. And seeing the current situation in Russia, you already understand, you already know what kind of fate communists or socialists, communist and socialist state ends up following. So, although a state ought to release misery people from suppression for establishment of an ideal state, it cannot help being exclusive to the opposition and terminating all the powers that interrupt the ideal based on a certain political ideology. So the same is the truth for Three Kingdoms saga of ancient China. The main character Liu Bei achieves fame and extends its influence through numerous battles as a commander of private military organization with no official post from the state at the time. And he has strong ambition to make the world better, make the world peace, and release farmers from abusive treatment by the tyranny of the authority back then. And he established the kingdom of Shu, and he becomes the emperor after the downfall of the kingdom of Hohan, in the form that he takes over the state administration from the previous emperor. So his governing is highly evaluated by general people. And in terms of his governing that brings long-term peace in the state, it depends to a large extent on his political skills, but not monarchy politics. So there are still some people receiving unreasonable treatment under this political structure. So from here, I'm going to talk about my speculation. So basically, we have to consider a political ideology with a combination of the degree of people's mental maturity. So in short, a democracy is the most ideal political ideology to our current mental maturity, which we can accept smoothly without hesitation. So in contrast, in terms of initial idea of socialism or communism held up by Marx and Engels, people's mental maturity doesn't actually reach the level that they can understand, accept it in a political system of the state, and administrators also don't understand the truth of this political ideology. So concretely, the condition that the socialism and communism can't exist for true peacefulness without tyranny of the authority and political suppression is that people at least need to have mental maturity equivalent to altruism, like people work not for themselves to accumulate their own wealth, but people need to work for others' benefit with a sense of deep contribution without thinking about their own benefit or own profit. So if you think about how much you can get in a proportion to the amount of work you do, supposing everyone's salary is the same amount, no matter how hard you work, you're supposed to complain about it naturally. And if your request of salary increase is rejected by the authority, you will naturally decide not to work hard, right? So this is all because you work for your own benefit. So as long as your first objective is to pursue the maximization of your benefit or profit, socialism can never be the place where you are, right? Because socialism and communism gives us a society that benefits of society takes priority over pursuit of individual profit maximization. So in that sense, people's mental maturity is still too young to understand initial ideal of socialism or communism advocated by Marx and Engels even now. So in the first place, from the viewpoint of long history of the earth, people's change in the degree of mental maturity is within a close margin, while the history of civilization for a couple thousands of years at the most. I mean, we are basically selfish, and we always think about ourselves now and the past as usual. So considering the doctrine of evolution, it took about 3 million years to evolve from Australopithecus to normal people, normal human like we are. And we should know how slowly the speed of humans' evolution is. So what I want to say here is like, it is not that easy for people's mental maturity to make progress as rapidly as the ideal world with eternal peace is established for a couple thousand of years at the most. So for now, democracy is the most ideal political ideology that makes even greedy and selfish and arrogant people live peacefully to some extent. But even in the situation, we have a lot of crimes everywhere in the world, even under this political ideology. So in the first place, controlling the state, controlling the country by taking strong leadership and incorporating a certain political ideology is the proof that people are still as immature as people's social norms and people's social ethics are easily collapsed without compulsory political system based on the political ideology. So fundamentally, before lamenting over a political shortcomings, individually making effort to raise our mental maturity is way more constructive to get the world better.